There are moments when dying people say things that sound like nonsense, say things that families dismiss as the confusion of a failing mind. And when Colonel Marcus Webb, a retired United States Air Force pilot with 30 years of service, was dying of pancreatic cancer in October 2019, when he was barely conscious and struggling to speak, he used his last moments of clarity to say 5 words to his wife Jennifer, said them with an urgency that seemed disproportionate to their meaning. Said, "Jeanne, the cat knows where it is." And Jennifer nodded and held his hand, thinking her husband was delirious, thinking the morphine was creating confusion, and Marcus died 3 hours later. And for 6 months, Jennifer and their 2 adult children assumed those final words were meaningless, assumed they were the rambling of a dying brain. And it was not until the cat, a sleek black Bombay named Radar, started exhibiting behavior so strange and persistent that the family could not ignore it. Not until Radar led them on a search that would reveal something Marcus had hidden for 27 years, something he had trained the cat to protect, and reveal only after his death that they understood Marcus Webb had been completely lucid in his final moments. Marcus had adopted Radar in 2012, had adopted him as a kitten from a shelter in Colorado Springs near Peterson Air Force Base, where Marcus was finishing his final assignment before retirement. And the family had thought it was unusual because Marcus had never been a cat person, had always said he preferred dogs, had always been about German Shepherds and Labrador Retrievers. And when Jennifer asked why a cat and why this specific black cat, Marcus had said something about the cat having the right temperament, having the intelligence he was looking for, and Jennifer had assumed her husband was just getting older and mellowing, was finding comfort in a quieter companion, and she had not questioned it further. What the family did not know was that Marcus had been planning for 7 years, had been preparing since 2005 when he received a diagnosis that would change everything. When doctors found a genetic marker that indicated a 90% likelihood of developing pancreatic cancer. Found it during a routine physical, and Marcus had asked the doctors how long if it develops, and they had said usually 6 months from diagnosis to death. Usually very fast, very aggressive, and Marcus had walked out of that appointment and started planning for a death that might come in 5 years or 10 or 20, and part of that plan involved an animal that could be trained, that could remember, that could keep a secret until the exact right moment. If you have ever dismissed something someone said because it seemed impossible, if you have ever ignored a message because the messenger seemed unreliable, subscribe to this channel right now, because what the Webb family discovered 6 months after Marcus died will prove that sometimes the things that sound like nonsense are actually the most carefully planned communications of all. Hit that like button if you believe that animals can be trained to do things that seem supernatural, and drop a comment telling me what city and country you are watching from, because this story belongs to everyone who has ever underestimated what preparation and patience can accomplish. Radar had always been an unusual cat, had always been more attentive than typical cats, more focused, and Jennifer used to joke that Marcus had somehow found the one cat in the world that acted like it was in the military, that followed Marcus from room to room, that seemed to be constantly checking on him. And their daughter Amy said Radar acts like he is on a mission, acts like he has a job, and their son David said the cat makes me nervous. Always watching, always waiting for something. And Marcus would smile and say Radar is just a good cat, just well trained. And the family accepted this because Marcus had always been disciplined, had always brought military precision to everything, including pet ownership. The behavior started in April 2020, started 6 months after Marcus died, and Jennifer noticed it first, noticed that Radar had stopped sleeping in the bedroom where he had always slept, stopped following his normal routines, and instead started spending hours sitting in Marcus's study, sitting in front of a specific bookshelf, staring at it, meowing persistently. And Jennifer thought maybe the cat was grieving, was looking for Marcus in the places Marcus used to occupy, and she tried to comfort Radar, tried to move him to other rooms, but the cat would always return to that bookshelf, would sit there for 6 or 7 hours at a time. Amy visited in May and noticed the behavior had intensified. Noticed that Radar was not just sitting at the bookshelf, but was pawing at it, was reaching up and touching specific books, was meowing in a pattern that seemed intentional, and Amy said, "Mom, this is weird. This is not normal cat behavior." And Jennifer said, "He misses your father. Cats grieve just like people." And Amy said, "No, Mom, this is different. He is trying to show us something." And Jennifer dismissed it because the alternative was to believe that a cat was communicating a specific message, and that seemed impossible. By June, Radar had stopped eating regularly, had lost weight, was spending 18 hours a day at that bookshelf. And Jennifer called the veterinarian, worried that the cat was sick, and the vet examined Radar and said physically he is fine. This is behavioral. Something is causing stress or obsession. And Jennifer explained about the bookshelf, and the vet said cats can develop fixations when they are grieving. Try removing the cat from the room entirely. Close the door. And Jennifer tried this, and Radar began howling, began a sound that was so distressing that the neighbors complained. And Jennifer opened the door, and Radar went immediately back to the bookshelf. David came to visit in July and decided to investigate. Decided that if the cat was this obsessed with the bookshelf, they should at least look carefully at what was there. And he started pulling books off the shelves, started examining them one by one, and Radar became agitated, became more vocal. And when David pulled out a specific book, a hardcover copy of The Right Stuff by Tom Wolfe, about the early astronauts, Radar went silent, stopped meowing, sat down and stared at David. And David opened the book and found nothing, found just a book. And he put it back, and Radar immediately started meowing again. And David pulled it out again, and again Radar went silent. Jennifer came into the study, and David showed her how the cat responded to this specific book. And Jennifer said, "Your father loved that book. Read it dozens of times. It was one of his favorites about aviation history." And David said, "But why would the cat care about a book?" And Jennifer had no answer. And they spent an hour examining the book, looking for hidden compartments or messages, and found nothing. And they put it back, and Radar resumed his vigil, and the family was at a loss, could not understand what the cat wanted, could not connect the behavior to anything meaningful. In August, Jennifer was cleaning the study and decided to reorganize the bookshelf, decided that maybe changing the environment would break Radar's obsession. And she started removing books in stacks, and when she removed The Right Stuff and set it aside, Radar jumped down from his watching position and went to the book, sat on it, would not let Jennifer touch it. And when Jennifer tried to pick up the book, Radar became aggressive in a way he had never been before, swatted at her hand, hissed, and Jennifer backed off, and the cat sat on that book for 6 hours guarding it. Amy returned in September, and Jennifer told her about the book incident, and Amy said, "We need to really examine this book, really take it apart." And they waited until Radar was distracted, and Amy grabbed the book and took it to the kitchen, and she started examining every page, every inch, and on page 217 she found it. Found that the page was slightly thicker than the others, and when she held it up to the light, she could see that 2 pages had been glued together, had been carefully sealed, and Amy got a knife and carefully separated the pages, and inside was a key, was a small silver key with a number stamped on it, and a note in Marcus's handwriting that said Storage Unit 847 Peterson, AFB, Radar knows. The family stared at that note for a long time, stared at the key, and Jennifer said, "I do not understand. Your father never mentioned a storage unit." And David said, "Peterson Air Force Base. That is where he was stationed before retirement." And Amy said, "The cat knows. That is what the note says. Radar knows." And they looked at the cat who had followed them into the kitchen, and Radar was sitting calmly now, sitting peacefully for the first time in 5 months. And Jennifer remembered Marcus's last words, remembered him saying the cat knows where it is. And she started crying because she understood that Marcus had not been delirious, had been completely lucid, had been trying to tell her that Radar would lead them to something important. They drove to Peterson Air Force Base the next day, drove with radar in a carrier, and they found the storage facility on base. Found Unit 847, and Jennifer used the key and opened it. And inside was a small climate-controlled space, about 10 feet by 10 feet. And it was filled with boxes, dozens of boxes carefully labeled and organized. And on top of the first stack was a letter addressed to Jennifer in Marcus's handwriting. And the letter was dated 2012. Was written the same year Marcus adopted radar. Jennifer opened the letter and read it aloud to Amy and David, and Marcus's words explained everything. Explained that in 2005, he had learned about the genetic cancer marker, had learned he was living on borrowed time, and he had decided to prepare for his death in a way that would give his family time to grieve before dealing with practical matters. Had decided to gather everything important and hide it so that they would not have to sort through his belongings while they were still raw with loss. And he had spent 7 years collecting and organizing, and then he had adopted radar, had spent months training the cat to associate that specific book with a reward, training radar to go to that book, to make noise near that book, to guard that book. And Marcus had written, I trained radar to wait 6 months after my death before starting the behavior. Trained him using timers and scent markers that would degrade over time. Trained him to be your guide when you were ready to find what I left for you. The boxes contained everything Marcus thought his family would need. Contained all his military records and medals and commendations. Contained financial documents and insurance policies and account information. Contained letters he had written to each family member. Contained photo albums and personal items organized by category. Contained a detailed instruction manual for handling his estate. And there was a box labeled for radar that contained cat food and medical records, and a trust fund Marcus had set up to pay for the cat's care for the rest of his life. And there was a note that said radar did his job. Please make sure he lives comfortably. He earned it. Jennifer found a box with her name on it, and inside were letters, dozens of letters that Marcus had written over the years. Love letters and memory letters and apology letters for things he wished he had done differently. And there was a video recording on a USB drive, and they watched it on a laptop, and Marcus appeared on screen. Appeared healthy and strong because he had recorded it in 2012. And he said, if you are watching this, it means I have died, and radar has done what I trained him to do. And I need you to know that every moment of training that cat, every hour I spent planning this was because I loved you and I wanted to protect you from having to make decisions while you were grieving. And radar was my way of giving you time. Amy found a box addressed to her, and inside was every letter she had ever written to her father from summer camp and college and her early career. Every single one preserved and organized chronologically. And there was a letter from Marcus that said, I kept these because I wanted you to see how much you have grown, how much you have accomplished, and I am so proud of the woman you became. And there was a small jewelry box with a pair of pilot wings, the wings Marcus had worn on his first solo flight, and a note that said, you taught me about courage, even though you thought I was teaching you. David found a box with his name, and inside was Marcus's flight jacket from his first combat deployment. Was the jacket Marcus had worn in Desert Storm in 1991. And there was a letter that explained why Marcus had been strict with David growing up. Explained that Marcus had seen what happened to pilots who were not disciplined. Had seen friends die because of small mistakes. And Marcus had pushed David because he wanted him to survive whatever life threw at him, and there was a college fund that Marcus had been secretly maintaining, enough to pay for David's daughter's education, and a note that said being a grandfather was going to be my next great adventure, and I'm sorry. I will miss it, but this will let me contribute anyway. The family spent 6 hours in that storage unit, spent the afternoon reading letters and crying and laughing and understanding that Marcus had used his final years to build a time capsule of love, and radar had been the key to finding it, had been trained to wait until the grief was less sharp before revealing what Marcus had prepared. And Jennifer looked at the cat and said, you knew this whole time what you were supposed to do. And radar meowed once and rubbed against her leg, And Jennifer understood that Marcus had thought of everything, had planned not just for his death, but for his family's healing. And if this story has shown you that preparation and love can extend beyond death, that sometimes the strangest behavior has the most profound purpose, subscribe to this channel for more true stories about the animals who carry out missions we cannot imagine. Hit that like button if you believe that intelligence in training can create moments that look like magic. And leave a comment sharing a time when something that seemed meaningless turned out to be crucial. Because these stories matter. These moments when we realize that confusion was actually clarity matter. And I will see you in the next story.